try to be as effective and efficient. And so one of the things that we try to do in the legislative process is every bill that comes through, we have chief counsel that studies the legislation, that prepares us for going into the chamber and understanding what the day is going to be in terms of debate. The other thing that we have to do is that we have to make sure that we know what's going on. So a lot of times you have to make sure that you're talking to everyone, understanding what the leadership has planned. I think back in probably 2012, probably the Accountability Act, when they passed the Accountability Act, that was a changing point for the relationship of Democrats versus Republicans. That was the standoff between Dale Marsh and myself at the podium. You probably could YouTube that. I don't think Lieutenant Governor K.I. could get control of the chamber. And at that point, I can truly say that it changed the way that we interacted with one another. And so that has been beneficial to understanding the process and trying to work in a system where we are truly in the minority. But you don't have to just be in the minority where your voices aren't heard. You can always impact the system by engaging in meaningful dialogue and understanding the rules of engagement. I tell people all the time that being in the legislature, it's not checkers. A lot of people like to play checkers. It's truly chess. And so everything, you have to calculate every move. And so that has been beneficial to us, not giving 100% of what we want, but trying to make sure that we can stop some things that will be extremely detrimental to those who we represent. And so that's what this process is all about. But being here with Democrats, I'm hopeful, and it gives me hope. But as I was telling Mr. Quinton when I came in, that it's so important that as Democrats statewide, that we come together. We're going to have to come together. See, right now we've given you all everything that you need in order to make the case. We called it the RBB in our debate a couple of weeks ago. We told them that the Republican Party they're rebranding and rebuilding by passing a lot of legislation that means nothing to the citizens of the state of Alabama because they've been damaged. I mean, you lose the governor of the state. He goes down because of unethical and improper dealings. You lose the Chief Justice of this state because he is not willing to follow the rule of the law. You lose the Speaker of the, we have so much. And so we have to get our message out to people, and people have to understand what really is taking place in the state of Alabama. So we have enough, but we just have to get it out. And how do we get it out? Through individuals like you, talking to your neighbors, talking to your friends, and they can see it. And then don't talk about our president. That's easy. So we have enough, but unless we come together as a collective body, our message is always going to be mixed. And so we have to do something to try to rectify that. So here I am today to talk about redistricting. And of course, we started out this journey in 2012. And of course, we know that the census is done every 10 years, and I think the maps came back to show that there were probably some 137,000 individuals in each Senate district and maybe 45,000 in each House district. And so that was what the reapportionment committee took off with in order to redistrict. Well, as it would have it, Republicans gained control after 136 years, and they wanted the first redistricting to be a slam dunk. They wanted to make sure that they kept their supermajority. And even standing at the podium, and it was for the record, standing at the podium time after time, letting them know that the procedure that they were following in order to draw the maps was going to get them in trouble, unconstitutional, too strict. But to no avail, they didn't listen. We told them, if they could run back the tapes in the Alabama State Senate, we told them that your redistricting plan is going to end up in court. And so when the Alabama Legislative Black Caucus and the Alabama Democratic Conference sued for the redistricting plan that they submitted, it not only went through to a three-judge panel where you had two judges voting saying that it was okay, and you had one dissent in Judge Myron Thompson, who dissented saying that this was unconstitutional, that there were some racial issues in the drawing of these maps, and they didn't believe it. But we took it all the way to the Alabama Supreme Court. And I'd never been to the Supreme Court until that time, but to sit there before the late Anthony Scalia and listen to them argue this redistricting case and talk about one district in particular, which was Senate District 26. And of course, I wanted to jump up and say, hey, that's me, you know. But really, the point was, in that first case, was that what they did was use race. They packed African Americans into what we call majority black districts. They continued to pack population in there in order to draw the map. Okay, they were hanging their hat on, you know, we want to make sure that we don't violate the Voting Rights Act. But of course, we know that it had already been gutted. But they still wanted to rely on the principle because it was convenient. See, they already gutted Section 5, but they wanted to rely on the principle and saying that, hey, we want to make sure that we don't mess up these majority black districts. And so they kept putting black population. Well, but they also violated the Alabama Constitution because they violated whole county lines. They violated the fact that you don't allow community of interest to have influence in other districts. And so all of these things compounded, which got the case taken to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed. They agreed with us. So the Alabama Legislative Black Caucus and the Alabama Democratic Conference were victorious all the way to the Alabama Supreme Court about the districts in the state of Alabama. Now, what they did say was that there were 12 districts. There were 9 House seats, and there were 12 Senate seats that were unconstitutional, that had some racial issues there. And so they remanded it to the lower court, and the court sent it back and said, well, we need to redraw these districts. Thus is why we're dealing with this issue in the legislature at this particular time. Matter of fact, we only have 6 days left, okay? Some think it's by design that we waited so late to get the district drawn because see, you give them to the courts. We're out of session on May possibly 22nd. The courts want the districts by the 25th. So if nothing else happens, you get to run in the same districts, right? Next year before. So you know, again, remember I say that it's chess and it's not checkers, because we say, yeah, we won, but strategically we're pushing that thing right up till it's time for us to run for re-election next year. And the courts may or may not decide. Remember, it's going back to the 3-judge panel. We know who sits on that panel. Somebody by the name of Pryor. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, as the kids say, I'm just saying. So what has happened is, and in the first process, the same thing that happened in the first process has happened in the second process. You had a reapportionment committee that was made up of the majority, and you did not practice inclusion in terms of the discussion. So what would happen is those people who were on the committee, and I'm on that committee, Senator Bobby Singleton, Senator Vivian Figure, Senator Linda Coleman, Madison, Senator Smitherman, they are all on that committee. And what would happen is that the maps would just come in. The information just come in and they take a vote. Take a vote, despite discussion that wanted to be held, despite input that we wanted to give, they would take a vote and pass without little conversation or communication. And that's just the way the process went the first time, and pretty much is gone the same way. But this time, at least, Senator Dow, who is the chairman, he's asked people to come look at your district. Tell me what you think. Tell me how it looks. And so it's interesting because he and I both sat in the federal courtroom the first case where I had to testify to my district, and he said, well, I think the attorney asked, well, did Senator Dow ever ask you to come look at your maps? And I said, well, no, I don't recall him. But what did he do? I said, well, I just recall him saying that he took care of me That was it. And he did. He put a whole lot of people in my district, right? So he took care of me. But in terms of sitting down and really talking about the integral parts of the map, that didn't happen. So for example, in Senate District 26, back then, before the 2012 plan was, that they introduced this 2012 plan, I think I was at some 72% in terms of African-American population within the district. After their plan, I think I became 75%. But you have to remember that when we're losing population in areas, but if you're trying to keep protect incumbents and you're trying to keep Republicans in office, then what you do is draw so you can get outside population. So when you look at Senate District 25, Senator Brubeck, he goes all down to Crenshaw County, reaching all the way down south to pick up population when really it's unnecessary. And so what they found in the Supreme Court case was that there was a claw in Montgomery, right in the old Cloverdale, a claw that they had drawn. And so they thought it was real peculiar. That's what they called it in the court case, that it was peculiar because what they were doing was making sure that he had white population and I had the black population. Matter of fact, I walk in somewhere and they say, well, I thought I was in your district. No, I live across the street. I'm in your district. You're not in my district. So that's the kind of game that was being played, and that was the first case. Well, now, you know, I get a chance to go sit down and look at my map. And so I see, and what we also have to realize is it's not just population, it's voter age population that makes the difference. That's where, when you talk about elections and how elections, you know, because you can have all the population, but if they're not able to vote, number one, if they're not of age to vote, and then number two, if they're not registered, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. So now they have the district, in District 26, they have it right at 69% black population. And so the voter age population is 67%. And I sat there and I told them, I said, listen, I would like to think that I can represent white people just like I represent black people. So I don't need 69%, 67%. See, because all the time in my mind, I'm thinking about District 25 over here, that if I can get an extra 35 or 36%, if I can give me a strong white Democratic candidate to run in that district, I can give up some population to make that happen. But they're thinking, remember, because it's chess, that if I give that population, then we will find that marginal candidate there that can win in Senate District 25, and that could be a pickup for us. That is what the issue is. And all 12 districts, they've just gone in and just done just the minimum in order to try to meet what the court has required in terms of redrawing the districts. But what happens is, there's a ripple effect. It's no way that you can touch 12 districts, and there are 35 state senate districts. There are 105 house districts, and you don't touch anything else. Well, you do. And so that's called the ripple effect. And so what happened was, now in the Supreme Court case came down for Alabama, but then there was another case that came down called the Bethune-Hill case with the Virginia Board of Education. And in that, they specifically were saying that, and they gave more guidance. This is after our case at the Supreme Court. And they gave even more guidance on how the district should be drawn. And the court rejected Virginia's attempt to make it more difficult to bring gerrymandering claims. So, you know, they were trying to say, well, hey, this is not gerrymandering, but the courts rejected that. The decision clarified that states cannot get out of gerrymandering claims by just drawing neat districts. So Senator Dow said, well, look, I did you good. I gave you all the Cloverdale. Okay, right? But it did nothing to my overall population, particularly for blacks, right? He said, well, look, we gave you whole precincts, which is fine, but it still did nothing in terms of the overall picture, because we used to split precincts, right? And again, I can give up some population, so if I have to have a split precinct, that's fine, because I'm still encompassed in one county, my county boundaries, right? So he thought he was doing me a favor, but the decision clarified that states cannot get out of gerrymandered claims just by drawing neat districts. As the court said, the Equal Protection Clause does not prohibit mishap in districts. It prohibits unjustified racial classification. So now their buzzword is, so when I talked about giving up a population, he says, well, Senator, surely you're not wanting us to look at race. And I had to remind him, I said, when you talk about population, you talk about race. So it's just a matter of which you say it. It's the context. You know, you can use semantics, but you have to consider it, because now what they're trying to act as if they're not looking at race to draw the districts. They're just looking at population. The race is encompassed in the population. So anyway, you know, we're trying to make our record. They're trying to make their record. But the other thing that came out of the Bethune-Hill case was that the court affirmed that states can create majority-minority districts in order to ensure meaningful minority participation or representation, okay? But reminds states that they cannot use districts as a means to sort voters by race to suit their own political needs. And that's where we are now. So what happens? We're in session. Last week, the bills came out. The Democratic Legislative Black Caucus had a bill of redistricting that we introduced. The Reapportionment Committee introduced their bill. Of course, theirs passed. But we did still have dialogue, because what we had to do in the last time is to set it for the record. We have to have conversation about it. So we used every strategic move we could, even before they put cloture petitions in, to talk about these matters. And really, when you look at it, they're not so far apart, but they're just resistant to just moving those few people into other districts that can make a difference in elections. So that's where we are right now. So the Senate version has passed. We still have the House version to come back. But we have told them that we believe that these maps will end up in court again, because they hadn't done much. When I looked at the Senate districts and looked at the House districts, the percentages hadn't changed much. And I just can't believe that the courts would look at this and say that you've accomplished what we asked you to accomplish. Well, I can't believe it, just depending on, because again, you look at who sits behind the bench. That's why it's so important when you talk about elections. But we're still fighting. We're depending on this ripple effect, because there hadn't been enough ripple effect in the way that they have drawn these districts. And so we will see when they turn in this. I think it's on the 25th, if I'm not mistaken. Deadline for the legislature to return to the three-judge panel is the 25th, and of course that'll be after session. Now, of course, the governor could call a special session if it wasn't, if it's not right. But I really think the move is to kind of sit on it until the next election. Okay, so there we have it. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is that, anybody in here used to live in Jefferson County? Jefferson County? Yeah. Jefferson, Pastor? Jefferson County always had a problem. So that's one of the major issues right now, Jefferson County, because what they've done now, in Jefferson County, where there used to be an even Democrat, Republican, they've changed it. And in order to change it, what they've done is pulled in people from areas outside of Jefferson County to be on the delegation in order to accomplish the goal. So now there is a majority Republican that controls the Jefferson delegation. So if you've heard everything that is going on with the waterworks,
oh yeah,
if you've heard everything that's going on with, even with the city council, it's because what they've done is pool population, say from Walker County, people who probably never ever been to Jefferson County, never been to Birmingham, are in the delegation. And they make all the decisions that take place in Jefferson County. And so that's been a point of contention. As a matter of fact, I think even one of the maps, particularly in the House, has drawn incumbent Democrats into the same district. So, of course, you saw the other night where the House went all night. That's kind of what that was about. And those are kind of the only tactics that we can use to at least get their attention. It doesn't change anything, but it sure does hurt when people have to stay all night. So, but Jefferson County is an issue. And I think both the Senate and the House wants to get Jefferson County worked out. And of course, we know that we're in the minority, but you just don't have to accept the fact that they can take a place like Jefferson County, which is a huge area, and bring in so many people from other places to make determinations for the individuals that live in that area. So those are some of the problem spots. But that's where we are in terms of redistricting. I would say to be continued. It's still out there, and so at this time I entertain any questions and try to answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So they turned this in, I guess you said